Hi everyone, Claire Rattee here, Conservative candidate for Skeena-Bulkley Valley. Just wanted to take a few minutes to discuss the recent headlines about our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who has been found guilty for a second time now of violating the Canadian Conflict of Interest Act. So not only is he the first Prime Minister ever in Canadian history to be found guilty of breaking Canadian ethics laws, but he's done it twice in one term, 4 years as our Prime Minister. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the 5th ethics probe that the Liberal Party has undergone since they took office 4 years ago. So those are some pretty troubling numbers. What's really upsetting to me about this situation is that, prior to this report coming out, Justin Trudeau insisted since February that all of these allegations were false. He lied to the Canadian public for months now. I don't know how foolish he thinks we are or if this is just what he thinks he can get away with, but it's deeply troubling that our Prime Minister thinks so lowly of us as Canadians. I think that it speaks volumes to his leadership and the way that he has been running this country into the ground for the last 4 years, and it's really disgraceful. I'll read an excerpt from the report. So the Prime Minister, directly and through his senior officials, used various means to exert influence over Ms. Wilson-Raybould. The authority of the Prime Minister and his office was used to circumvent, undermine, and ultimately attempt to discredit the decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions, as well as the authority of Ms. Wilson-Raybould as the Crown's Chief Law Officer, Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner Mario Dion. So this is in relation to the SNC-Lavalin scandal, for those of you that aren't aware. Justin Trudeau used political influence to try and interfere in the proceedings of criminal charges against a company in Canada, SNC-Lavalin. He absolutely interfered in our judicial system. He tried to push for a deferred prosecution agreement. He interfered with the then Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould's ability to choose to go with the deferred prosecution agreement or not. We then later found out that this deferred prosecution agreement only came into existence as an option because SNC-Lavalin lobbied the government to bring this legislation, and they basically snuck it in this big omnibus bill. So this is quite literally our Prime Minister trying to interfere in our judicial system for completely political reasons because he's being lobbied by a corporation. That is deeply, deeply troubling. And if you're not as upset about this as I am, then you should probably start doing some research because this is not a good sign of things to come. You would especially expect at least an apology from our Prime Minister after this, but the only words he could muster up was that what they did over the last year wasn't good enough, and that he will not apologize for trying to stand up for Canadian jobs. I mean, really, you interfered in a criminal case. It doesn't matter what your motivations were, not that I buy for a second that it was to protect Canadian jobs. I know it was purely political, but you still interfered in our judicial system in Canada. You don't have that right. Not as our Prime Minister, it doesn't matter. You just don't have that right. So I'm quite upset about this. I think it's also upsetting because the Liberals, they really campaigned in the last federal election on this platform of sunny ways and we're going to do things differently. And that resonated with a lot of Canadians because there were a lot of people that were kind of fed up with our political system. They felt like it wasn't really working for them. They felt underrepresented. They really wanted to see a change in Ottawa, and this is what they got saddled with. Sunny ways is actually just Prime Minister Justin Trudeau thinking that he can lie to the Canadian public and interfere in whatever he wants and that he is beyond reproach and above the law. So unfortunately, all those people that felt really strongly that this might be the answer they were looking for got screwed. I think it's really important to keep these things in mind, and it's also important to keep in mind that Justin Trudeau most likely will not face any kind of legal action, even though he has been found guilty of this. So the best way to make sure that he understands that the actions that he took were absolutely disrespectful of Canadians and have no place in our country is to show them that at the polls. When you go there in the fall, make sure that you think about issues like this Make sure that your decision is a thoughtful one and that you really consider the ramifications of Justin Trudeau becoming a two-term prime minister. I think that most of us can agree that the outcomes have not been good. It doesn't surprise me that he would do something like this. He's very self-entitled. He was born into the lap of luxury, and he doesn't really understand what everyday Canadians go through. So it is not surprising that he would think that he is above the law and that he can operate with immunity and do as he pleases. But I think that it is incumbent upon us as Canadians to make sure that we do stand up for the ethics and the morals that guide this country, and make sure that that's not being infringed upon by a so-called leader like Justin Trudeau. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, feel free to leave them below or reach out to me online. Thanks.